Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to another exciting episode of Duck Stories, a platform that invites people to share stories of professional and entrepreneurial failure. My name is Sania Ijaz. I'm Manager Corporate Innovation at Telenor Pakistan, and I will be your host for the evening of celebrating failures. The stories of the businesses that crash, the partnership deals that go sour, and the products that have to be recalled. We tell them all. Although today's speakers need no introduction, I am honored to have Irfan Wahab and Muneeb Maayr on the panel with me today. Irfan Wahab is the CEO of Telenor Pakistan and the chairman of Telenor Microfinance Bank. He has a long association with Telenor Pakistan, being the first member of the startup team when he joined the company as executive vice president in 2004. Muneeb is the founder of Bykea, Pakistan's largest network of motorbikes serving transport, logistics, and payment services. He has led many companies, including SNL Financial for 7 years, after which he served as a co-founder and CEO of Daraz.pk for 4 years before founding Bykea. So welcome Muneeb and Irfan on the panel today.
Thank you.
Today's episode will be focused on the importance of segmentation of your market and customers and how one can segment smarter. So my first question is directed to the both of you. And Irfan said maybe you can go first. What does segmentation mean to you as a telco and then as a startup? And what is the importance of it in your respective areas?
Yeah, so segmentation is key, especially when you are addressing, like you mentioned, telco in particular. I mean, is a mass market. So our audience are, entire population actually. So it is very important that in order to be effective, in order to really reach out to the right audience and understand their needs, you need to really go deeper and segment them. So that's how we started. So for us, it was primarily when we started, it was a youth segment. Some of you may recall a brand which was known as D-Juice. Then we had a mass market, and we addressed that segment through TalkShock, which was a very popular brand at one time. And then we had Persona as our corporate brand, which is targeting towards corporates. High value customers. So we started in a very, I would say, traditional way of segmenting broadly. And for us, I mean, our universe is more or less entire population of the country. I mean, if you just leave the young and the elderly. So we're talking about tens of millions of potential customers when we started. But as our journey emerged, we realized that we need to really go even deeper than those broader segments. And our ambition for many years has been that, and we are learning from different industries, is just that we should be able to pitch individual price points, individual solutions, individual products to all our customers. Just like when you travel on an airplane and you book your ticket, it's very personal. I mean, depending on so many parameters, time of the booking, how advanced you are, whether you have any corporate deal or not, different passengers are getting different price point for the same journey, for the same experience. And that's our sort of ambition, that we need to go personal. We need to really able to understand our customers. So today we are quite far in that journey, where we are serving about 1.5 million customers every day with unique offers. So moving away from like 3 or 4 broad segments to really totally individual and personalized journey is quite amazing. That means that we are so broadly speaking, still today we have about 60 different segments and 3 geotypes. So 15 segments, 3 geotypes is the universe broader, but then we are getting to the customers on the individual so that we can serve their needs better. So 8 million unique offers, 8 to unique customers every month is where we are. And this is a journey which continues. Our ambition remains that we need to really connect to each of our customers depending on their needs and should be able to offer products and services which they value.
Right.
Definitely, you're absolutely right to actually really target and get to know your customer really better. What about you, Muneeb? What do you think segmentation means for a startup?
So I think our product offering is not for everyone, right? And because it's not for everyone, we have to go find where the customer is. right? And for those of you who are not very familiar with Bykea, we're primarily a motorbike taxi business. Okay, and what we struggled to sort of do initially was one, build awareness कि ये भी एक mode of transport है और ये भी आप कर सकते हैं. But I think we made certain mistakes initially कि हम क्योंकि customers और drivers दोनों को acquire कर रहे थे और वो भी app installs acquire कर रहे थे. I think we sent very mixed sort of messages to an audience. And of course, हमारे लिए थोड़ी सी targeting आसान ये होगी थी कि आप Facebook पे खासकर जब आप advertise करते हो तो you can choose a gender, right? So we were targeting only men for the most part. But at some point, and I think we did it too late, at some point we were sending mixed signals कि जी आपने क्या सवारी लेनी है या आपने driver बनना है. And it took us about a year to recognize that was perhaps not the best strategy, and so we took off the driver app of all advertising. And then we started to build जिस तरह आप लोगों ने telecom में franchise network खड़ी की, उस तरह we started to build a franchise network to garner supply. Or for us it's a lot tougher because everyone needs to talk, and everyone probably needs internet, right? But not everyone wants to sit on the back of a motorbike to get from A to B. And I think what was a little complex for us was that, in addition to that, we also were trying to figure out how to address a slightly more affluent market. And for us, the rest of the market, which has hovered between 30% and 10% and 30%, which is non-taxi, has been for the most part been choti businesses, या छोटे दुकानदार, right? Like आपने शायद Bykea इस्तेमाल किया, but you're not really a large demographic within the daily use of Bykea. Most of the people who are using Bykea, even for deliveries, are very small traders or businessmen, right? And so it gets even harder when you're trying to target that demographic, right? So how do you identify who is going to need you for business or SME level delivery? So I think we are beginning to now use GPS level data to be able to map कि आपकी जो residence है या आपकी जो usage है वो कहाँ है, and then we're trying to figure out कि वो section या वो जो radius है वो residential है कि commercial है, और commercial है तो किस नौयत का commercial हो सकता है. We're still trying to figure it out, but I think it's a lot harder for niche players to try and identify how to spend their money, right, and how to reach the right customer, because you don't have a lot of money and you're wasting a lot of money by essentially just spraying and hoping someone will catch, and that's extremely inefficient, right? So if you're trying to tabulate, if you're trying to understand, okay, am I spending the right money with the right people and have the right frequency, you want to be more intelligent with it, right? And so it's a constant, I would say, आजकल तो it's become sexy to talk about AI, but essentially it's lookups and if statements, and you're looking at your data and you're saying, am I targeting the right people? Because if I'm not, then I'm just burning my money.
That's true. Which leads me actually, Muneeb, to my next question. It's kind of aligned with what you were saying, so I'll direct this one to you. The Bykea brand seems to represent completely different value propositions to different users, as you mentioned. So who are you really targeting?
So I think initially तो हम खुद confused थे. हमने कुछ 9 buttons डाले हुए थे अपनी ऐप पे, and I think it was mostly from an attempt to try and figure out कि stickiness कहाँ से होगी. जब हमने product launch किया था तो premise ये थी कि जी predominantly deliveries होंगी, लेकिन जो organic uptake आई है वो सारी bike taxi से आई है. And so, you know, I mean, no one believed that. No one was like, bike taxi Pakistan mein kahan chalegi, right? But that's where the organic growth was coming from. And so then we got kind of swayed by दुनिया में क्या हो रहा है कि जी अच्छा ये भी डाल देते हैं, ये भी डाल देते हैं, कोई 9-10 बटन हमने डाले हुए थे, and we said हम ये भी कर सकते हैं, वो भी कर सकते हैं. Of course, we were trying to raise capital, right? And जब आप capital raise करने की कोशिश कर रहे होते हैं, आप 15 कहानियां बटोरते हो in hopes के you know someone will think what you're doing has an opportunity to capture the right type of target demographic, right? But I think after about a year and a half or 2 years, we had resigned कि भाई हमारी organic जहाँ से growth आ रही है, let's just focus on that. And so we just focused on motorbike taxi. And so if you notice, at least over the last 12 months, आपको delivery की बहुत ज़्यादा आपने अगर different platforms से सुना होगा, वो और सुना होगा, लेकिन वैसे advertising from a pure advertising perspective जहाँ हमारे पैसे खर्च हो रहे हैं, तो हमने we have not advertised for anything beyond motorbike taxi, right? लेकिन I think वो अब channels exhaust होने शुरू हो गए. Exhaust का मतलब है महंगे होने शुरू हो गए, because I think वो एक पॉइंट तक आप उस पर बहुत ज़्यादा पैसे नहीं डाल सकते क्योंकि वो फिर यूज़र एक्विजिशन महंगी होनी शुरू हो जाती है. सो अब हम नए ऑफलाइन चैनल्स ढूंढ रहे हैं ताकि ऑनलाइन से हट के ऑफलाइन चैनल्स बाइक टैक्सी के लिए करें. एंड सो व्हाट यू विल बिगिन टू सी फ्रॉम अस very soon is now a lot more online marketing towards a slightly more affluent demographic. Again, now that affluent demographic is bifurcated between a chota dukandar and an upper middle class person, right? So, and that can be female as well, right? So historically we have not targeted females, and of course that's not a good thing, but like, I mean, we have to figure out who we're trying to sell to, right? So yeah, I know that it's been confusing, and I know it's been and it's hurt us more than anyone, right? So ultimately it's hurt us because of a brand, and it's hurt us because of we burnt a lot of money, and money that was not efficiently spent in targeting. But I think we're beginning to now understand कि एक channel को आप एक time पे एक ही USP के लिए इस्तेमाल करो, unless you're able to very clearly and distinctly bifurcate the audiences.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It is a series of experimentations till you get it right as well. Irfan Sahab, so in the past 15 years in Telenor, you were employee number 1 at TP. You've led teams as a CMO, and now you're leading Telenor Pakistan as a CEO. And I believe there are many, I feel there are always learnings for corporates from startups, and then vice versa. Similarly, there are many startups that can learn from corporates as well. So considering that Telenor Pakistan has launched many different brands and products over the years, how can startups learn from our experience of experimentation?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. I think our journey has been also is quite similar in terms of exploring, right? So when we entered into Pakistan, हमारा अगर initial business case देखें, at that time, I mean, there was, I would say, limited competition. जो हमारी penetration थी, that was also quite limited. So we assumed that people should be able to spend more money per connection, जिसको हम ARPU कहते हैं, average revenue per user. But soon we realized that we were wrong in our assumptions, and we did a huge investment initially into the spectrum. At that time, back in 2004, $291 million was a lot of money. We spent similar amount of money in the initial phase of capex. So we had certain assumptions, and when you see a year down the road कि आपकी कोई भी assumption पूरी नहीं हो रही, because people all of a sudden, I mean, the whole market exploded in terms of that we started moving down the value chain quite quicker. Mass adoption होना शुरू हुई. We were obviously the disruptor in the market because उससे पहले pricing was done quite complexly. So we came and we bring that USP के it has to be a single price. There's no hidden charges, smart pricing. उससे पहले national roaming भी charge होती थी, receiving party भी कुछ उससे और पहले चले जाए तो होती थी. So there are a lot of complexities in the tariffs. And as we come and break those barriers, bring in simplicity, we also bring in efficiency in terms of, at that time, quite innovative. People used to do recharge through scratch cards. That was the only way of topping up. And we bring in the electronic recharge, easy load for the first time. That also bring in a lot of convenience to the people and the whole market export. So, but point I'm making is that you need to adapt, right? So, जो आपका business case जो आपने खुद present किया हुआ है और वो is gone off the window, you have to go and defend and protect के यार अच्छा pivot कैसे करना है, अब how we adopt to that. So that's something which obviously, regardless whether you're a startup or a corporate, you have to go through the same. I think exploring का जो innovation का जो culture है, because that's how you find your position, you connect to your customers, you grow your business, has been a key DNA for us. So bringing in a lot of innovation, just making sure के innovation की जो possibilities हैं हर तरह से हमेशा से रहे organization के अंदर. Right from building a culture which was very open. Imagine 16, 17 years ago, a very hot desk type of concepts Pakistan में कहाँ होते थे. And building a culture which is quite egalitarian. That means that very few layers or levels in the organization. To product innovation, जैसे easy load का जिक्र किया, कुछ साल बाद easy paisa was born. That's perhaps a lot of people don't even know. That's perhaps one of the greatest success stories. Startups के field में अगर आप देखें, and the valuation which it got. So we were valued a couple of years back at $450 million, something which started as a very small microfinance bank, and we were able to, one of the founders were able to exit. We were able to bring in a partner at that valuation, and partner B, jo ke, the largest fintech player globally. I'm talking about Alipay or Ant Financial. So these are great examples. So that also shows that that type of value creation is not just limited to startups or corporate. It can be done either place. But at the same time, to think कि यार हम corporate में रहते हुए we are startup, it's a wrong thinking. I had that thinking myself, because when I started, as you mentioned, as the first employee, so we did not have any support infrastructure. Muneeb, it will be interesting to know, we started with a very small office, Saudi Park, Islamabad makes business center. So when you're there, you're doing everything of yourself. Hiring bhi chal rahi hai, aap office space bhi dekh rahe hain, aap pricing pe bhi kaam kar rahe hain, aap consultants ke saath bhi engage hain. So it was really, I would say, from a wide viewpoint and all that, you're getting that startup feeling. But ek cheez was very different. We don't have to worry about the funding, right? So you know that there's a large corporation backing you up. So that's a big difference between a startup and if you're working for a corporate. But still, there are a lot of similarities and there's a lot of learnings. And then this is all about how you aim high, how you team up, how you learn from your mistakes, because everyone will make mistakes, regardless of corporate sector mein ya startup mein, and how you deal with those pressures and how you learn and stand up again. I think is one key attribute which differentiate between ordinary and extraordinary, I would say. So I think from that perspective, and now I would argue that abhi jo viewers hame sun rahe hain aur dekh rahe hain, opportunities jo aaj hain, they did not existed at that time. So I think we're lucky with the huge penetration. Again, credit goes to, at least some credit should go to telco sector for making sure that now it's the connectivity is everywhere. We have 4G coverage to almost 80% of Pakistan population, not just confined to urban areas, but also to far-flung. So there's a lot of innovation happening. There's a lot of talent, no doubt, in our country. All it needs is everything to come together to create this digital ecosystem, which is, again, building up. And we have fantastic stories like Bykea, for example, were able to raise money and able to establish themselves, and many more. So I stay very positive on this, but I think it's also about collaboration, because neither the public sector, the policymakers, corporates, startups, academia, development sector, we all need to come together to build this ecosystem together and support each other. And I think that's the key going forward.
Wonderfully put, Irfan Saab. And I love how you're talking about all the things that I have in store for us today as well. Culture, innovation, all of these things we'll be discussing more in detail. Muneeb, over to you. So I want to know what has been your duck story relating to raising Bykea to where it is now, and what are some of the common pitfalls that are in segmentation that startups face or that maybe you faced?
जी, तो I think पहले तो I will acknowledge the fact that हमारी businesses would not even exist without the infrastructure that telcos like Telenor have put together. Right? I mean, they wouldn't exist, right? Without the internet, without the telecom infrastructure, you wouldn't have apps, right? But I mean, I think I'll talk about something called cohorts. और ये लफ्ज़ मैंने सीखा ही actually एक टेलीनॉर के एम्प्लॉई से था, आज नहीं, तकरीबन 6-7 साल पहले, ठीक है? And what it means is कि जो आप कस्टमर बिलफर्स आपने जनवरी में एक्वायर किए है, ठीक है, वो कस्टमर जो है आज अप्रैल में आपकी उसने फरवरी में, मार्च में एंड देन अल्टीमेटली अप्रैल में कितनी ट्रांजैक्शंस की हैं और आपके प्लेटफॉर्म पे है भी कि नहीं है. इज दैट कस्टमर स्टिल योर कस्टमर और नॉट, राइट? एंड देन ऑफ कोर्स जो आपने जनवरी में ये कस्टमर एक्वायर की है, ये कहाँ से कस्टमर आया है, कौन से शहर से आया है, कौन से प्लेटफॉर्म से आपने एक्वायर किया, किसको पैसे दिए हैं जिसके वजह से कस्टमर आया है, किसको रेफरल दिए जिसके वजह से कस्टमर आया. एंड आई थिंक हमने जो एक बहुत बड़ी शुरू में गलती की कि हम कोहोर्ट्स को देख नहीं रहे थे, और शायद इतने गौर से देख नहीं रहे थे जिस तरह टेलकोस देखते हैं. एंड रियलिटी ये है कि जिस सेगमेंट में हम हैं उधर भी एवरेज रेवेन्यू पर यूजर बहुत लो है, राइट? And the only thing you can do is increase the frequency, right? But if you keep sending messages or notifications or advertising to people who are not responding, then you're also wasting your time and you're actually deteriorating your brand, right? I mean, मैं very candidly आपको बताता हूँ कि दराज ने अपनी brand बहुत खराब की है by spamming, users, because Daraz was not necessarily great at cohort retargeting, and that's also because actually Pakistan की team, को वो इतना empower ही नहीं किया गया था. वो सारा एक जी फलानी एक basic tool है, उसमें that will figure it out, magic वहाँ से हो जाएगा. So I think if I were to suggest anything to startups, I think I would suggest a couple of things. One, learn from telcos because they have some of the best talent in the country, and they have groomed people to look at particularly data like no one else has. Not even, I would say, not even banks to a very large extent. And start looking at your cohorts very early. I mean, YouTube पे जाके आप इस पे videos वगैरह देख लो, आपको खुद समझ आ जाएगी. But I would advise you to start really looking at कि किस टाइप का यूजर जो है आपके साथ स्टिकी है, क्योंकि जिस टाइप का यूजर स्टिकी है आपने उसकी सिमिलर ऑडियंसेस बनानी है. And I'll give you an example of that. एक तो आप ये कर सकते हो, उस यूजर का मोबाइल नंबर या उसका ईमेल एड्रेस लेके अगेन फेसबुक या गूगल पे वापस डाल सकते हो कि मुझे इस जैसे लोग चाहिए. एक तो आप ये कर सकते हो. और दूसरा, आप जो अगर आप ऑनलाइन मार्केटिंग कर रहे हो, लेकिन अगर आप ऑनलाइन मार्केटिंग नहीं कर रहे, बिकॉज आप ऑफलाइन मार्केटिंग कर रहे हो, तो हम लोग क्या करते हैं कि हम यूजर्स देखते हैं कहाँ हमारे ज़्यादा यूजर्स हैं, और फिर उन यूजर्स को अगर हम डिजिटली रीच नहीं कर सकते तो हम फिर उन एरियाज में, और बाय एरिया आई लिटरली मीन लाइक 2-2 किलोमीटर के रेडियसेस, उन रेडियसेस में जाके फिर अपनी ऑफलाइन मार्केटिंग करते हैं, क्योंकि हम अस्यूम करते हैं कि वो सोशल डेमोग्राफिक्स जो हैं वहीं हमें और टाइप के यूजर्स भी मिलेंगे, राइट? सो yeah, I think we started doing it very late, and if there's anything I would advise you to do it earlier.
Thank you, Muneeb, for the candid answer as well. And I think the next question is directed to both of you. You both led and experimented as CEOs, led teams as well. How long did it take for you to experiment and get the right model? You, Muneeb, mentioned it briefly, but if both of you could just elaborate a bit on that. Irfan, maybe you can go first.
Yeah. Again, I mean, there's no particular time period, but I think we all heard the term fail fast. I think it's very important to get a sense that what you're trying to explore, does it have potential or not? Don't drag things too long. And we have made that mistake, and I've made that mistake personally many times, where you keep on trying and keep on using more or less similar structures and methodology without realizing कि यार ये चीजें आपको results नहीं दे सकती. So I think fail fast, explore new things, pivot is very important. But then there are certain things which takes time. I mean, in technology, we've been seeing that in many areas and many examples where technology was ready, but the market was not ready. And in telco space, we've seen that even from the launch of 3G, when the technology was there, but उसकी adaptation वगैरह नहीं थी. 5G में भी आगे भी यही लग रहा है, because it's not just a better customer experience, but the use cases around the whole ecosystem and how you build it. At least in Pakistan, it will take many more years. And again, it won't be telcos who will coming up with those use cases. It has to be the startups, largely in our context, because we are missing other industries, for example. So I think it's important to really aim big. And I think एक चीज जो while we are interacting through Velocity with a lot of startups, we are not thinking big generally. We are. I think we need to really think big. We need to really aim high. We need to have bigger dreams, and then we need to really explore, as you're saying. And then you will learn. You will know when to sort of pivot, when to move away from one thing to the other, and that's very important. But to have a clear objectives, I think is very important. I think in case of corporates, it's a little bit different than startups, because one learning which we have, and we are talking about duck stories, so failures I like to mention, is that, so very candidly, we thought that we can solve a lot of problems which we are facing outside the telco space. So a few years back, we realized that telecoms generally is stable. I mean, it's not growing double digits. So we need to really look at adjacent businesses, which are not necessarily related to or closely linked to your core. And that's not easy. So we have done many experiments. We have launched many products. We've launched many verticals. The biggest success so far is the financial services, no doubt. EasyPass, as I mentioned, it's become very important as an enabler for any digital ecosystem to really flourish. But we also had initiatives around mobile advertisement, for example. We had an initiative called Radio Magan. We had many of those initiatives as well. Then realized, and Agri, which is very close to my heart, and we exactly know the potential in that space. But what we were hoping, we're not able to realize it fully, and we need to really pivot there as well. So, and then you need to realize that, जो आपका सवाल था कि कितनी देर, we cannot keep on funding those initiatives forever. Because in corporate sector, Muneeb has spoken about the need for funding. We also have a need for funding in corporate sector. That means your sponsors are looking at, your investors are looking at, why should I invest in Telenor, for example? Because Telenor is giving me consistent dividends. Cash flows are quite stable. So our investors globally, because we are listed internationally, are typically pension funds. These are very conservative funds, mutual funds, who would like to put their clients' money in something which is very stable and not very risky. If they want to, and then they are happy with consistent returns. They are not expecting double-digit returns per annum. They are okay if you're giving them 6, 7, 8% dividends, because they will not trust you that you can give them that sort of valuations which they can get at Tesla, for example. Because if they have to explore there, or if they have to take similar risks, they will rather put their money in Tesla, because Elon Musk has much better track record or credibility than anyone in the telco business. So that's a fact, which we have ignored, to be honest and very candid. And we thought that as we have that huge scale, 48 million customers today, a lot of data, and then we are very proud of talent, as Muneeb said, in terms of people who are working and who are, but still, many of those areas were quite new for us. So it is important that one should focus on the core and stay close to your core, and do innovation there, try to improve, automate, excel, and innovate on the fringes, but don't expect to do everything yourself. In US, you see, similarly, if you look back 20 years ago, large corporations used to have all innovation centers. They have created venture capital. GE had the venture capital, General Motors, Ford, everyone. But these days, none of that is required, because you have a venture capital ecosystem which is thriving. Corporates doesn't need to fund it anymore. But in Pakistan, we are still early stage, and that's why we have sort of said that, okay, we have a role to play as a corporate to also encourage our startups, to provide them APIs. So, for example, my Telenor app, which I briefly mentioned, we're reaching out to 8 million customers with unique offers. We have a lot of APIs which which are available for startups. So we will play our role to a certain point, but then it's startups who have to figure out, and then hopefully, there will be more money and funding opportunities, which I'm quite sure about, and that will really take us forward as a society.
Thank you, Irfan sir. Muneeb, would you like to add to that?
Jay, I think, as far as startups are concerned, we are obviously trying to identify and to build opportunities in completely new, novel areas. Okay. And our investors have only invested in us for chakke, right? And so we have to take very bold risks, but we have to make sure that we, whatever story that we tell, and again, Elon Musk the stories tell karta hai, lekin ultimately he has to make sure that those stories come to fruition, right? So the stories that we tell, we are able to exhibit some traction there, right? And I think, we started this conversation off initially, we were trying to do a lot of things, right? And we are actually, again, going to try and do a lot of things by, you'll see in the next quarter or two. लेकिन हमने 2-3 चीजें realize कर ली हैं. एक तो ये है कि many a times we cannot build certain categories as quickly as we need to. हमें अगर किसी की assistance चाहिए in a module that they've already built, so let's try and plug that in. So for example, अभी हम जो internal chat इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं customers के साथ messaging की, वो that we're using TeleTalk for that, which is another chat based app in Pakistan. So you don't have to build everything, right? You can connect and latch on people or businesses that will help accelerate where you want to try to get. So that's one thing. और दूसरा, हमने realize कर दिया कि जी हमारी core expertise हमारी driver partner network है, that is our real network. And so ultimately हमने उसको messages भेजने हैं, और वो messages as in jobs offer होंगी, और उन तक है कि वो jobs pick up करें कि ना करें. अब उसके use cases multiple हो सकते हैं, but fundamentally, we have to identify कि हमारी core strength क्या है, और हमारी core strength हमारी driver network है, right? अक्सर लोग कहते हैं जी आप कार कैटेगरी में क्यों नहीं है, आप रिक्शा कैटेगरी में क्यों नहीं है. वो इसलिए नहीं है क्योंकि हमने recognize किया कि हमारी जो हमारी जो जिम्मेवारी है, वो ये है कि हमने अपनी नेटवर्क को यूटिलाइजेशन देनी है, यानी 1 घंटे के अंदर ज्यादा से ज्यादा काम देना है. तो अगर हम बिलफर्ज रिक्शा की कैटेगरी शुरू कर देंगे, तो जो एक बाइक वाला 1 घंटे में हमारे प्लेटफॉर्म पे आ रहा है उसको ज्यादा काम तो नहीं मिलेगा ना, कार कैटेगरी में आके उसको ज्यादा काम तो नहीं मिलेगा, तो अल्टीमेटली इट्स सेल्फ डिफीटिंग, राइट? सो आई थिंक स्टार्टअप्स अक्सर जो है फोकस नहीं करते, राइट? और हमने भी शुरू में फोकस नहीं किया, एंड आई थिंक we're learning how to figure out how to focus and identify कि आपकी core expertise क्या है. अक्सर लोग कहते हैं जी आप कोरियर बिजनेस में क्यों नहीं, क्योंकि हमारी नेटवर्क, लाइक वी कैन नॉट गो आउट एंड बिल्ड पूरे पाकिस्तान में जैसे टीसीएस ने या लेपर्ड्स ने या पाकिस्तान पोस्ट ने पूरे मुल्क में छोटे छोटे टाउन और शहर में एक नेटवर्क खड़ी की हुई. दैट्स नॉट आवर स्ट्रेंथ. Our strength is within a city. Our strength is within a few meters within a city, or a kilometer within a city. That's network penetration that couriers don't have, right? So I think again, I would absolutely agree with Irfan Saab. And this is not just with corporations. I think with startups, we need to learn from companies like Telenor on identifying where your strengths are and just focus there.
Very nicely put. So moving on to the next segment, we are going to talk about a little bit about culture. They say that culture is the backbone of innovation. So Irfan Saab, what do you think? How do you think culture of risk taking and innovation is different in a telco versus a startup?
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of similarities, but there are differences as well. So in terms of similarities, obviously this first is, I'll come back to the point that you need to have that desire, that you want to create something, you need to solve a problem, you need to innovate and come up with something which is useful, which gives value to your customers. So that is a fundamental, and that's, I would say, same or has to be. On regardless of whether you're a startup or corporate. Then how you approach it, I think is a bit different. In corporates, obviously, there is a lot of resources available to do big projects, to do innovation, but it's not just about resources. It's also about the mindset and how you sort of apply that mindset, how you build that culture. Because, and to me, that's very important that, it cannot be a traditional way, which is hierarchical. Your manager or your leader cannot tell you. I mean, it has to come from the teams. You need to have that fire in the belly to say that, okay, there's a problem to be solved, and that's how we need to solve it. And that's how you organize as well. So one big difference, I would say, is that corporate is that hierarchical structure still, where you have silos. We are trying to sort of diffuse those silos to the extent possible by going more agile, by working in metrics, working on projects. And that is, I would say, one big difference between large corporates and startups. And we were also not like that. We were a lot more nimble, a lot more agile when we started, just I mentioned many years ago. But as you grow, I mean, the complexity grow. When you're serving, 48 million customers, I mean, your billing systems, your CRMs, your, all those complexity adds up. But that should not be seen as an obstacle. You still need to see that if you're doing a task, why are you doing it? Are you solving a customer problem? Or are you just generating work for the sake of it? And then that's where the culture plays a role. When each and every employee is empowered, where each and every employee and colleague is able to ask that question to himself, herself, or his leader, that what is the purpose of this? Where we are heading with this task? And I think that's a key differentiator. So culture of empowerment, culture of innovation, and then also, I mean, I must say that one of the values we're getting out of initiative like Velocity is getting closer to the startups. So when you interact with the startups, you realize, because people, I mean, it's a human nature. Yeah, they see that grass is greener on the other side, and then you tend to think that life is easier. So I used to used to get a lot of complaints from our people that work-life balance has gone off, right? Because there's a lot of things we're trying to do as Telenor. People are under stress. There is a lot of challenges till the time that some of our colleagues start interacting through Velocity and directly with some startups, and then they realize that we have something called away days where people go on trips up north. That's pre-COVID, obviously, and then people have leave fare assistances, and we encourage everyone to go on a 1 month paid leave and all that. And people realize that things may not be as bad because they see that life at startup is a lot more hours, a lot more struggle, a lot of uncertainty about the cash flows, whether you're able to have that runway. So I think it is very good. And similarly, people who are interacted and coming from a startup, they realize the challenges and the opportunities at the corporate side. So I think the interaction and that engagement simply give different perspectives, which is very important for all of us to learn and grow as individuals and professionals going forward.
Very nicely put, Irfan Sahab. Muneeb, in your opinion, startups generally have a higher risk appetite when it comes to failing fast and failing often. Do you think this is true?
In principle, yes. In principle, that's what should happen. By definition, startup को करना क्या चाहिए? Agile होना चाहिए. यानी एकदम आप चीजें खड़ी करो, test करो, and then try and scale it and grow it, right? And I think many people are fascinated with the sexiness of startups and tech in general, but their personalities are not that. And I'll tell you what I mean by that, right? In a startup, you are not in a very structured environment. You're in a mildly chaotic environment, sometimes wildly chaotic environment. And you need to be hands-on, which means that you will not have an army of people under you to get stuff done. Now, of course, there have been startups which have had a lot of money and unki faujein thi, but if you're like most startups, you don't have an army of people under you, right? Which means that you have to be an individual contributor. And as an individual contributor, some of you need to for sure be inventors, because by definition, startups are trying to invent a new way of doing something. And I think people get, sometimes, are just not fast enough. And so, it's funny that basically aapki, ये पूरे program का नाम Velocity है. तो हम तो within the company दो चीजें कहते हैं, भाई टीम में या velocity होनी चाहिए, या individual में velocity होनी चाहिए, या attention to detail या forensicness होनी चाहिए. और ये अक्सर ये दोनों मिल की चीजें बहुत कम होती हैं, and जिनमें ये दो चीजें combine नहीं होती, वो भटकती हैं, or ultimately they're not able to deliver, right? So again, to answer your question, the hope and intent is that they have the attention to detail, the forensicness, the forensic mindset, the grit and the velocity to continuously iterate. But that is not necessarily the case. So sometimes when I hear about कि 4 साल तक वो अभी तक startup चल ही रही है 2-3 लोगों के साथ, कोई traction नहीं है, I wonder if it's a hobby. And listen, what we're trying to do is not a hobby, right? This is a business. And if you're not moving the business forward, then you're wasting your own time,
Yeah, that makes sense. Another question I wanted to ask you, Muneeb, and this is something that I feel would be really beneficial for startups. So most people, as you mentioned, even in your own journey, they segment their audience at the wrong time. In your opinion, what is the right time to start segmenting in a startup life cycle?
Yeah, so I think पहले तो आपको very clearly define करना पड़ेगा कि आप क्या solve कर रहे हो किसके लिए exactly solve कर रहे हो? And I think many a times people are not clear about that. वो कहते हैं जी we'll figure it out, right? So I think frankly speaking हमने late की है, लेकिन I think within 1 year maximum you need to have figured it out. Yeah. And if you have not figured it out, then you will either waste a lot of money or you will waste time. It's one of the two, right? So I think, yeah, so within 1 year, you need to be very, very clear.
All right. My last question to both of you before we move to the Q&A, and I'm just loving the discussion. I didn't realize we're 45 minutes past into the conversation. The last question to both of you is, what are some of the key insights that you are getting now regarding consumer and market trends, especially in their behavior as a result of this pandemic? And how have these changing consumer trends impacted your plans to improve customer experiences or journeys? Irfan, you can go first.
That's a very good question. Let me just first mention that why those looking at those trends and differentiating yourself from other competitors is extremely important. And I'll give you an example. I took a role of our chief marketing officer at Telenor back in 2013. And when I came back, I was overseas for 4 years before that in Telenor at the group level. I analyzed that the market is quite cluttered. When you look at the brand and segment, there was hardly any differentiation. Everyone was trying to do more or less similar things. But then you go deeper into the brand studies and analysis and try to figure out specific attributions. And one thing which stood out is that our customers in general are not very happy with how we are pricing and how we are, whether we are clear and transparent in our pricing. So that came out as a very interesting insight, and we really build on it, and then we build the whole plan around it. That's when we really push hard around the mass market brand, which used to have TalkShock, and push transparency as a position where there were a lot of auto recurring around the VAS services. There were a lot of hidden charges which were being, and customers, for example, if they subscribe to ringtone, they were doing an auto next month. So we took away all that. We took a very strong position on the Marcom side of it, and we said that to the entire organization, and commitment to internally to us is that from today onward, we need to differentiate ourselves on this particular attribute. And then, the results were really amazing because that was a year, the next year, and when the entire telecom sector was disrupted in a way. The overall revenues for the sectors have gone down, and we were able to actually gain market share for next 2 years till everyone else also adjusted to that. So the segmentation is very important, and to really figure out that how you reach out to those audience to address their pain points and their concerns. Now I think we are also at a crossroad with the global pandemic. Customer behaviors have definitely changed. Obviously, there's a lot more digitization which is happening. We see that we used to have close to 5 million customers going to those mom and pop stores every day to top up small denominations, 50 rupees in typical ticket size. But now that has changed. That has changed because people are concerned somewhat. I mean, they are going with slightly bigger denominations. They've adopted more digital topping up through EasyPaisa and other alternate digital channels. And we see a huge shift, a quite significant shift towards digitization, towards automation, towards digital payments. So that's very interesting, and that's what we were hoping for quite some time, and then pandemic and then COVID has really pushed the entire market in that direction. And I'm really hoping that this will stay. So there's a clear shift in the customer behavior. They want to sort of avoid a lot of those interaction, crowded places. They would like to see the convenience. And I think a lot of people have experienced that because it also opened up their mind and thought process that this is possible. Just like we're doing this session today on Zoom, I'm sure if it not have been COVID, we would have been at our beautiful multipurpose hall, gathered there with audience and doing this. But things can be done this way as well. So I'm really hoping that all businesses, not just ourselves, should be able to actually ride on this opportunity where we keep on educating our customers more and more. Customers are ready now. The behaviors have started to establish. And this is a fantastic opportunity for us generally as a society to go and excel towards digitization because we have a long road ahead of us. It's not just about how we communicate. It's also about how we learn, how we do healthcare, e-commerce, payments, everything. So I'm quite again optimistic that COVID has really shown us a way, and our new normal will be very different. And this is a unique opportunity because we have not really built huge legacy infrastructures. We are not really worried about those investments because we never done those investments. So we can really leapfrog in this context.
Thank you, Irfan. So very nicely put, and I completely agree with you on the fact that this, although COVID has brought in many problems as well, but it has also made us more digital and has digitized our economy very much as well. Muneeb, what are your thoughts?
So I think दो demographics में तोड़ूंगा ऐसे, ठीक है? तो I think जो upper class है, ठीक है? Upper class और upper middle class जो है, उसकी absolutely communication, remote working, behaviors change हो गए, or it's working, like today's meeting, it's working, and and that's great, right? Because upper class and upper middle class also constitutes most of our employee workforces as well, right? At least the office going once. And so that's great news for the educated in Pakistan, right? What has also happened is that the upper class's propensity to pay digitally and the upper class's propensity to use delivery services, just like they would in Riyadh or they would in London or they would in Istanbul, has increased. And so if you as a service offering were catering to the upper class, your business must have grown, right? For sure. I think for transport, our competitors have unfortunately seen their businesses crash in the car category, right? Completely collapse. Itna ke basically, I don't want to divvy numbers, but they're dead pretty much, right? And so I think different sort of categories में काफी नुकसान भी हुआ है, upper class की जो basically companies target कर रही थी. Now, if you come to the middle class, and again, I won't talk about the bottom of the pyramid because I don't really know much about them, right? They probably live on farms and villages and pockets in the country, or they probably don't have the disposable income to be digital, today. So the middle class, if I just talk about transport, we have seen a massive surge towards motorbike taxi, and you would say why, right? I think we took our bets right. We assumed that people would move away from more expensive basically modes of transport like cars, and perhaps not feel comfortable in going in vans or buses. And so we, I think our bet paid off there. So if you talk about our transport business, our bike taxi business, that has absolutely grown like anything, right? And I think we need to now figure out how to cater to the upper class or the upper middle class. And we are coming up with products around payments, but mostly around, digitizing cash. That's what we're focusing on. So going cash to digital, how do you do that? So we're going to be focusing around there. And I think we kind of missed on the opportunity because we didn't have our products ready for the upper class. But I think now that our network is stronger, because you have to realize the taxi business in itself helps create network density, right? Because the use case is a lot more, right? I mean, if you talk about the population, the sheer size of the population which is going to be using transport versus basically having the disposable income to afford the luxury of delivery is a lot more. So I think now that the network is a lot bigger and a lot denser and more powerful, we will edge into creating products and serving a new set of target demographic.
That makes absolute sense. And no, it looks like the future is bright for us in terms of how we're going to get to know more of our customers and create solutions for them. I'd like to now move to the Q&A and hear it from the audience as well. We have some questions coming in. So Mohammed Faraz is saying, very insightful discussion. I want to ask Muneeb, what are his thoughts about companies like Careem who are moving into multiple verticals under the super app umbrella and not necessarily focusing on the core?
Yeah, so I mean, the thing is, are you going to deliver food in a car? Are you gonna deliver a parcel in a car? It's not gonna happen, right? So suddenly now you've sold a story that you copied from Southeast Asia, but that story came from a network density of motorbikes, right? And so while that story may pan out in Dubai, that story may pan out in Jeddah and Riyadh, it's a harder story to deliver on in Karachi, right? Now, of course, Islamabad, perhaps a lot more. I would say Lahore, perhaps more as well. But and the reason I say that is because Pindi, look, I'm from Pindi as well, but I'll tell you the Pindi, Islamabad, and Lahore people are just a little more fussy, just a little more. I don't know how to put it. Like, they're just more. I mean, forget it, right? So.
No worries.
I don't know how to put it as well, but I get completely.
So I think I'm negative on Careem, and I hate to say this, but I'm negative on their super app strategy because I think it's a borrowed strategy. It hasn't been thought through. I think it was a strategy that was adopted from Southeast Asia without deep thinking at a country level. And so that story may pan out in Dubai, but it's hard to see that story pan out in Pakistan.
All right. Thank you. The next question is for Irfan Saab. Riaz Hassan is asking, thanks for the great conversation. A question to Irfan. In the next 3 years, which verticals do you see greatest opportunities to pivot for telcos in Pakistan?
Yeah, no, this is a fantastic question. I think there are a lot of opportunities. Like I said earlier, I mean, we firmly believe that the entire society is here at the verge of being transformed digitally. So the key again is that what are the closest areas to our core, to our where we can really excel. So one thing which we have seen huge traction, and then I would say especially during COVID, but even before COVID, is gaming. So gaming globally, I mean, trend-wise as well, leading into esports, I think is a global trend, and then we are no different. Our youth is no different. All we need is better connectivity, better devices, obviously, and this will come. The other thing where we have embarked upon already, and you see is everyone talking about is data as a service, not just for our own use, which we are doing to large extent, and there's room to do more. But I mean, how you offer that insights and make them actionable for other businesses, for a fashion store, contextualize it so that you can exactly work with a fashion brand and tell them when there's a socioeconomic segment A or B, for example, female age 25 to 40, they want to know that walking into Dolman Mall in Karachi or Santoras in Islamabad, you can actually deliver a real-time offer in that context. So I think that's a big opportunity where telcos have advantage over others, I would say. Then I think fintech is already something which is accelerating. A couple of us and One Worker Better are quite big in that. So I see that maybe others will also jump in. So these are some of the, and then lastly, I would say content, which is again, the big trend gonna be that how we digitize what used to be traditional VAS services. Now you see people, I see, for example, security guard outside banks just watching content on their mobiles, right? So there's a lot of dearth of entertainment avenues. We have load sheddings and TV and PC penetration being low, so this screen becomes the prime screen for all that consumption. So I think these are 4 key trends which I see telcos and others obviously will be embarking upon within the next 3 years.
Thank you, Irfan Sahab. The next question is from Sana Bilal. It's not addressed to anyone, so either of you or both of you can answer. So Sana is saying, how does the definition for celebrating failures differ from startups versus corporates?
Yeah, so if I may, you want to go, Muneeb, please?
मैं बड़ा मुख्तसर जवाब देता हूँ कि हम तो फेल करके हमारे पास पैसे ही खत्म हो जाते हैं, इनके पास पैसे नहीं खत्म.
So again, there's an academic answer and there is practical answer, right? So actually, this is going back to building the culture. Or I would say, I'd like to give credit to you, Sania, and team Madhya as well. Duckstories, for example, is something I've not come across, at least in Pakistan, where we are celebrating failures and we're talking about those failures. So I think we need to do more of that. We need to be comfortable कि हम failures की बात कर सकें, क्योंकि देखिए human nature है और हम लोग भी we love to sort of brag कि हमने ये कर लिया, हमने ये तीर मार दिया. लेकिन you know, and we all, if we are mature and honest to ourselves and reflect, कि आप learn कब करते हैं? Learn आप तब करते हैं when you're put in a difficult situation, when you are challenged, when you are out of your comfort zone, when you fail. That's how you learn. So I think individually it is very important as society. और ये शुरू से हमारे यहाँ ये बड़ा issue है. I would say schools के अंदर भी जब बच्चों की upbringing भी इस तरह के यार failure एक stigma बन जाता है. That has to change. We all have to change, right from early education to all the way to the job market. And then it's same. You know, for startups maybe it's a little bit challenging, but again, inshallah, the way the whole ecosystem is developing, there is more and more opportunities. And I think people will, at least when we are hiring people, we give emphasis and say, okay, what are the learnings? What sort of failures you've made? Because, you know, in our hiring, we give a lot of weightage to people who have actually failed and admit and learn and have and reflected on those things, because that's how you grow.
That's true. We have another question from Sadaf Amin, although it's not directly related to our conversation, but I would like for her question to be addressed. So she's saying, my question is how Telenor is reaching to farmers who are not educated and don't know how to use a smartphone or app.
एक चीज I like to mention, because that was मेरे लिए भी बड़ी insightful थी, कि we think of people being illiterate and then say कि यार ये बड़ा एक barrier है. Whenever I travel, go deep rural, I met people, बुजुर्ग लोगों से मिला, 80 साल ज़ईफ, वो फोन पे लगे हुए. एक टेलको ने अच्छा काम किया है कि आपको पैकेज लगाने सिखा दिया. तो फाइनेंशियल लिटरेसी एवरीवन नोज, जो शायद मुझे और आपको नहीं पता कि यार 8786 क्या मतलब है या इससे क्या होगा. People know it. So people are very, at least financially literate. जहाँ तक farmers का ताल्लुक है, तो हमने ये देखते हुए कि how can we make that journey easy. So खुशहाल जिम्मेदार जो हमारी एग्रीकल्चर की सर्विस है, जो तकरीबन इस वक्त कोई 80 लाख के करीब फार्मर्स जिससे फायदा उठा रहे हैं, it's a voice IVR based service, जिसमें आपको प्रॉम्प्ट होता है, you can subscribe to that, अपना आप लैंग्वेज चूज कर सकते हैं. इट्स इन रीजनल लैंग्वेजेस एज वेल. आपको सिर्फ उर्दू में नहीं मिलेगा, आपको सराइकी में मिलेगा, पंजाबी में मिलेगा, सिंधी में मिलेगी इन्फॉर्मेशन. यू कैन चूज योर डिस्ट्रिक्ट, वेदर इन्फॉर्मेशन आपको चाहिए, you can dial into that number, get that information over voice prompt. Exactly because of the same reason के navigate करना smartphone पे, if you're not well literate, could be a challenge. So I think we need to find solutions, and that's exactly what we did with the agri service.
Thank you for addressing that question, Irfan Sahab. Muhammad Zubair Khan is saying, being a business graduate, how do we take startups and tech-based startups, as we have many multi-millionaire ideas, but we cannot execute due to the lack of knowledge? Muneeb, would you like to take that?
जी सो देखें, मेरे दिमाग में भी सारा वक्त नए आइडिया आ रहे होते हैं, ठीक है, लेकिन मसला ये है कि आपको आपको नैरो डाउन करना होगा। आई मीन आई गिव एन एग्जांपल कि जब मैं दराज छोड़ा था तो मैंने 3 आइडियाज़ जो नैरो डाउन किए थे। उन 3 आइडियाज़ के मैंने प्रेजेंटेशंस बनाई थी, 15-15, 20-20 स्लाइड्स की प्रेजेंटेशंस बनाई थी, और उन तीनों बिजनेसेस के लिए मैंने एक बिजनेस प्लान बनाया था, फाइनेंशियल मॉडल बनाया था, और मैंने वो तीनों को साइमल्टेनियसली मैं पिच कर रहा था, ठीक है। जिधर से पैसे मिल जाए, जिस आइडिया पे पैसे मिल जाए, आई वुड हैव गॉन फॉर इट। एंड सो मुझे याद है कि सो मेरा जो एक आइडिया था उसका नाम था मोबाइल प्लान, नाम ही मोबाइल प्लान था। तो मैं नदीम हुसैन साहब के पास गया और मैंने कहा जी कि हम किस्तों पे स्मार्टफोन्स जो है ना वो बेचेंगे। तो नदीम साहब शॉट इट डाउन विद इन लाइक 10 मिनट्स, राइट। ही सेड कि भाई आप जो ये फाइनेंसिंग करेंगे ना माइक्रो फाइनेंस बैंक से, आपका लीड टाइम इतना ज़्यादा हो जाएगा कि आप उस लीड को लूज कर देंगे। तो when I found someone so experienced say कि I don't think this is a good idea, right? I dropped the idea, right? And you know आज उसको तकरीबन 4-5 साल हो गए, 4 साल हो गए, right? In the future is that an opportunity? Absolutely. जिस दिन मेरे ख्याल में PTA जो है वो ब्लॉक करना शुरू कर देगा उन delinquent यूजर्स को जो कि पैसे लेके भाग जाते हैं, मोबाइल लेके भाग जाते हैं अक्रॉस ऑल कैरियर्स। तो वो मैं जब इस्माइल शाह साहब से जाके मिला था PTA में, तो उन्होंने कहा था कि जी हम इंशाल्लाह करेंगे। तो मैंने कहा इंशाल्लाह का मतलब है कि दिस इज अ ह्यूज रिस्क, राइट। सो आई थिंक to summarize, you have to do 3 things. One, you have to make a presentation because that will allow you to think about what it is that you are trying to present as a story. 2, you have to build the financial model yourself. ना कि जी मैं किसी और को कह रहा हूँ कि जी आप प्लीज मेरे लिए financial model बना दें, आप प्लीज मेरे लिए business plan बना दें. You can't outsource something that you want to build yourself. And third, go speak to not average Joe Schmoes, just go speak to basically people with a lot of experience. And if they're lukewarm about your idea, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should think twice.
Yeah, well, very nicely put, Muneeb. Irfan Sahab, I know we're a little over time, but I just want, for the sake of everyone who's asked their questions, we just cover a couple of more questions. So one more question for you, Irfan Sahab. You have an accelerator. Do you plan to create a venture arm for startups or get into acquiring startups?
Yeah, so the short answer is not at this stage. देखिए हमारी thinking ये है कि what is again our value proposition to startups? Our value proposition is that we have access to data of 48 million customers. We have a world-class distribution network जो कि पाकिस्तान के हर कोने में है, 2 लाख से ज़्यादा retails है, हमारी अपनी franchises हैं. We have APIs through API gateway which we can integrate आपको location की information, billing की, payment की. That's how we can help you scale up. अगर funding की requirements के, there are so many other people there, and there will be more inshallah in the coming years. So we don't see that we add much value. So we really want to focus on our core and how we can help you grow and develop based on that.
Thank you. And last question to you, Muneeb. Zishan Shiraz is asking, please tell us about your plans and use cases of payments on the Bykea platform.
I mean, you'll find out about it very soon. लेकिन essentially हम हर यूजर को एक लिंक देंगे, bykea.shop, bykea.cash/ उनका मोबाइल नंबर, और उस लिंक पे वो कराची, लाहौर, इस्लामाबाद में किसी से भी कैश ऑन डिलीवरी के जरिए पैसे वसूल कर सकेंगे. And also Visa, MasterCard. Again, we'd like to promote digital if it becomes too much of a hurdle from many perspectives. We don't have to, but yeah. So we want to enable everyone in Pakistan to think of themselves as an entrepreneur and to start a commerce business.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I had a really wonderful time hosting the two of you. Quite a few learnings for me as well. I hope you had a good time. Thank you for taking out the time, actually, especially after iftar as well. I know that's the time when you're really low on energy, but I'm glad we just kept the conversation going. I'd like to now close the conversation, but of course, as Duck Stories is going to be live, we're going to be doing monthly events. I would love to have you both over once again to this platform and have these conversations again.
Thank you, Sanya, of course, for setting this up, and Irfan Sahab, thank you for giving me an opportunity. Obviously, we are always learning from leaders like yourself, and companies who have a proven business model and actually make money, and we're aspiring to be more like you.
Thanks, Muneeb. Thanks for joining, and you've been a fantastic inspiration for our youth. So keep up the good work. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Take care. Have a lovely evening. Khuda Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.